Welcome back to the Duval County Courthouse in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm Ashley Banfield reporting live. This is Legal View, and we're here on location at the Michael Dunn trial. You may have heard it as the loud music trial. A lot of other people who are hearing this as another trial about race and about a young kid who's dead because of someone who was afraid, or at least that's as the story goes. A lot of facts being thrown around in that courtroom where we're not even halfway through this case at this point. That the prosecution did just rest moments ago, so we're expecting the defense case to get underway. And there are 16 people in that courtroom who matter most, who truly matter most, as it is always the case, the jurors. Yes, there are 16. That's because there are alternates, and no one knows at this point who the alternates are. I can tell you the makeup of the 16, though, and this is critical. We have 10 women. I said 10 men earlier on. It's 10 women and 6 men. 10 of the jurors are white. 3 of them are African American. 2 of them are Asian, and 1 person is described as both white and Hispanic. So that's the racial makeup, if that matters at all, and many say it does. But what about their attentiveness and what they're like in court and how they're taking all this information in? Sunny Hostin, our CNN legal correspondent and analyst, has been in that courtroom. She joins me live now, able to come out during a quick break. So tell me everything. How does it feel? What does it seem when you watch them? Are they fascinated? Are they interested? Are they upset? Tell me the descriptions.
Now, Ashley, I've lost your IFB, but I think you were asking me about the jury. They are riveted. They are fascinated by this case. I will tell you, during the medical examiner's testimony in particular, they looked very disturbed, as oftentimes a jury is when they are seeing that kind of evidence. They're looking at the photos of Jordan Davis laying, of course, nude on the examination table. And this medical examiner is actually quite good in terms of just breaking it down, making it very accessible for this jury. What I would like to point out in terms of the jury, which was fascinating to me, one of the jurors, an Asian female, and I had the opportunity to sort of observe her during this testimony. She is a doctor, Ashley. She is a doctor. And out of all the jurors, she was sort of chewing gum, which tells you that she's used to hearing this type of evidence and sort of seeing this type of subject matter. Also, what's very interesting and different, I think, from the Zimmerman trial is that there are 3 black female jurors. They're quite young. I had the opportunity to observe them, and none of them have children. But get this, Ashley, they are also some part of the medical field. There's a nursing student, an occupational therapist, and then on the other side of it, a telecom specialist. So these are jurors, by my assessment, that seem to be very analytical. So they're really taking in all of this evidence, and it was a really fascinating day. I will say that this case is moving very, very quickly, and we haven't heard from Michael Dunn. So it seems like the state learned a pretty big lesson from the Zimmerman trial. They didn't put in any of his statements. So I suspect that in the defense case, if they are trying to show self-defense, and I'm sure that Mark O'Mara can weigh in on this, that he's going to have to take the stand.
And Mark has said that. He has said without question this case is screaming for the defendant's own words, because this is a different case. There's so much that isn't like the Zimmerman case. And while it does on its surface seem like it, devil's always in the details. Sunny Hostin, thank you for that. I also, since you just mentioned the fact that there are several of these jurors with a medical background, I want to play for you something that the medical examiner said this morning in testimony. Her name's Stacey Simons, and she spoke specifically about the fatal gunshot. For some jurors, that can bring you to tears when you're talking about a 17-year-old. For others, it's very clinical. Have a listen.
Over here, it perforated the right lung and continued on behind the heart and in front of the spinal column to perforate the aorta. Now, the aorta is the large artery that carries all the blood from the heart to the body.
With this bullet going through Jordan Davis's body at the angle that you've just explained to this jury, damaging all the internal portions of his body that you just explained, have been fatal all by itself to Jordan Davis?
Yes, it would.
Easy for a medical examiner to speak so clinically about something so devastating. I mean, we're talking about a kid dying. For some jurors, it's difficult. For others, it's not. And that's why, among many reasons, jury selection is so critical. Some people say cases are won or lost in jury selection alone. And there's one man who makes it a pretty big part of his profession, actually, to be an expert in that area. Richard Gabriel joins me live from Los Angeles. As a jury consultant, I'm fascinated to hear your take on what you think these attorneys were thinking when they went in, especially with the Zimmerman case not even a year out and looming large.
Well, Ashley, I think as you've talked about, there's three main components that I think both sides are looking for. I would call them the fear factor, forensics, and guns. And in terms of jurors, it's really their attitudes and their personalities that you're looking for in jury selection. You're trying to find out whether a juror is going to look at this case and is going to see these youths as a threat, thereby thinking that Michael Dunn is reasonable in his fear of them. They're going to take a look at that forensics, whether they're going to clinically look at the angle of those gunshots to see whether that makes sense, and fundamentally how they feel about guns, self-defense, and stand your ground.
So there's only one thing I would dispute here, and that is that in the many, many years that I've been doing this job, I would say that that's spot on. But since Zimmerman and a couple of other cases like it, and certainly since O.J. Simpson, I actually feel like race is just critical, period. You're not allowed to strike because of race, but you know what? It's critical in jury selection, and attorneys get around it in all sorts of ways. You don't think that race is critical, like #1 critical in cases like this now?
I do, but I don't think for the obvious reasons. I think race is an issue because it's whether those young black women on this jury are going to take a look at it from Michael Dunn's, not necessarily Michael Dunn's perspective, but saying, I know kids like this, I know they're up to no good, and I know they can be threatening, and I know kids who will ditch a gun like that, or whether they're going to say, here's another example of a white man just making an assumption about that. And that's where you have to really look at where race is the matter, what their experience is, and who they're going to hold it against from that experience.
And so the experience and the life experience is what I'm getting at here. It's not your color, it's your life. And why I say that is because one man's reasonability is different than the man or woman next to him. And I feel as though, isn't that now so critical in American jurisprudence, that your life experience is going to determine whether you believe that defendant to be reasonable or not? Because in your world, that was entirely reasonable, or in your world, that was ridiculous.
Ashley, it's everything. People's life experiences and their belief systems, their attitudes, their opinions, their values is everything. And also their personalities, whether they're emotional, whether they're going to really identify with the tragic death of Jordan Davis, or whether they're going to be able to look at more clinically. These are the factors that I look at, that most experienced people look at, that really determine how jurors come to a verdict in the case.
And there's always the reality of jury nullification. I mean, sometimes it isn't even about what has brought you to your reasonability. It is what you feel someone deserves or doesn't deserve in a courtroom. And that's where I think it should be a big concern as well in jury selection. A lot of jurors want to avenge stuff or give people a pass because of what they feel to be right, regardless of what the jury instructions tell them.
Well, I think it's why jury selection is so critical, especially in a case like this. It's probably why the judge really closed the proceedings, because they wanted to find out really how jurors' opinions, and it's why you need to really dig in deep in jury selection to find out what those life experiences are, because there's following the law and there's following your own common sense, your life experience. Whether that leads you to a verdict by evidence or whether it leads you to a verdict by this is what I believe is the right thing to do in the case, that's why you need to really dig in deep with these people and figure out who they are, how they're going to interact with each other, how they're going to listen and find for the case.
Yeah. I think your vocation is morphing by the minute, and so I applaud you for having to keep up with this. But this is definitely, I think we're at a real turning point, not just in Florida, right across the country. So it's good to talk to you from Los Angeles. Richard Gabriel, thank you for being with us. And one of the things that I mentioned a short time ago was would it be possible?